Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
If one pod was good, surely two is better. Welcome once again to the second podcast in 3 days. It's the Real Chili Podcast. I'm Brian Henry. I'm alongside Mike Lavender, Eric Pond, the two that were not on to immediately react to one of the biggest victories of the Steve Wojciechowski era. Let's get right into it. Mike Lavender, your immediate reaction as we record this 24 hours post Marquette's upset of Creighton.
Well, I got to say our pod rotations are really coming into swing just as Wojo's rotations of the roster are coming into swing with these games. It's really beautiful, and it's how we built this thing. It's great. It's great to be back on.
Hey, Wojo cut the rotation the other night. We had to trim the rotation down a little bit just to do it. And now we're coming back. The ball's rotating back the other way.
Giving the people different takes, giving them different perspectives, giving the people what they want at the end of the day. Look, my top line from yesterday, I mean, we're going to get into this a lot. We're a fucking basketball team. And this is – I don't know if it's the best basketball team that I've seen under Wojo, but we didn't win that game against Creighton by smoke and mirrors. We outplayed them, and they gave us punch after punch after punch. I think you could see in the Wisconsin game that maybe there was a little more smoke and mirrors there, and we got lucky with the tip-in and things like that. We're a basketball team, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Eric Pond is on vacation through the new year. He's feeling good. Don't think he's been sober for the last 72 hours. Eric, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling so good, Bubbles. I'm happy that Real Chili is back, and we are ready for Creighton Overview 2.0, ladies and gentlemen. I think I have the same reaction that I heard on last night's pod that I saw through the great Real Chili Nation contributions in the chat. I mean, Greg, impress. DJ Dawson late, kind of blossoming a little bit and really showing something other than his God-given ability around the three-point line and showing a little grit and grind and getting his nose dirty and putting his shoulder to the wheel. We can hang. This team showed something last night that was different than, I think, what we have seen all season, and it showed growth, which is the most incredibly promising thing that we can say right now. One game in, leading the Big East, it's just promising. I'm on my feet with you guys.
We're going to give you some different discussions here on this podcast than from just reacting to the Creighton game. We're going to look back basically through the start of this season now that we're done with conference play, and obviously a game in after a huge victory. Our biggest surprises, disappointments. We're going to look around the Big East. We're going to talk about what the expectations game is now with this group. But I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a little more time with you guys on what happened last night. Mike, or Mike and Eric, I want to do with both of you like I did with Pete, with the Pete's last night. I'm going to say a name. Give me your 10, 15-second reaction to that individual because, like you said, the team did it, and we'll hype Wojo here in a second. But there were some incredible individual performances. Mike Lavender, I'll start with you. DJ Creighton.
Oh baby, what an embarrassment of riches it is to see that kid grow into what his the full expression of his talent. You hear Wojo talk about it in the post game. They expected that he would need to grow into it based on his time away. I haven't seen, I know Neighbor's line is best point guard since Dominique James. He plays with a fluidity in a complete game that Dominique didn't have. And Dominique was a great player. I'm not saying that. I can't wait to see how much further it grows. And, I think there's a correlation between DJ's growth and this team's growth throughout the course of the season.
Eric Pond, you've been all over him. I'm going to pivot to somebody else. The other guy in the backcourt, arguably our most consistent scorer, Kobe McEwen.
Unbelievable. I mean, again,
just purely from a consistency standpoint, I guess he wasn't the best player on the floor, but you got another 18 points from him.
He was competent and he was consistent, and that is the best thing we can say. And honestly, looking back to the beginning of the year, he has exceeded expectations at almost every turn. Last night was no different. This is the Kobe we need. And if we can see some of that continued consistency out of Kobe in his play, what he's bringing to the table right now is very promising. He seems to be playing within himself more and more every game as we go forward. He has some moments here or there where there are head scratchers, although Greg took that mantle last night pretty heavily on with head scratching sort of decision making. Although again, I'm sure you're pivoting to him next. I continue to be pleased with what I see from Kobe. I think he's earned role, the minutes, and the respect and admiration on this team now that he has that perhaps was missing up through the early dregs of this year.
Eric just started to transition it. Mike, there's no point in waiting, right? I mean, I don't want to say stunner, but the surprise of the game, right? Greg Elliott, 14 points off the bench, 5 of 6 from the floor, oh ho hum, 4 for 4 from 3, and he looked like Reggie Miller on half of them.
He did look like Reggie Miller, and I think you fellas talked about it last night. Whether it's because he's a Detroit kid or because he's been through so much, we've got a soft spot for Greg, and I think a lot of the fan base does. This thought went through my head when I saw him shooting some of those threes last night. They looked unconscious. He wasn't thinking, the follow through was perfect, hand in the cookie jar, and that level of confidence. Maybe that's coming from the fact that this is the longest stretch he's been healthy in a Marquette uniform, and it's finally beginning to come together. I agree. He's showing a lot of, I think, what we all expected and hoped for him to show. Now it's for him doing it game in and game out. But, the debate is settled. He's a spark plug, and he can play that role on this team, and that's what we need him to do.
Zero hesitation that we see from Greg, the way he plays on the floor, that we finally are able to see now that he's overcome so much to get to this point. That also, it's what we've seen in his personality on the sidelines, on camera. It is who he is. I have confidence that this is who he is, and this is what we are going to see through the end of the year, through this season. It's so great to finally see his personality on the court, and that's what we're seeing.
And Mike, you started to allude to it. Not enough can be said, and Ben Steele in his gamer recap of the game really laid out for those that have forgotten. I mean, the injury, it's not just, Knicks and necks. He's overcome some traumatic injuries and very different parts of his body to get back. He had to burn, obviously, a redshirt year. He is he's scholarship eligible next year as well. Just an awesome story for him to have a game like that in the road. And then I'm going to roll these two together, and we'll wrap with this as we talk about this game. Justin Lewis, Dawson Garcia, the two freshmen in the front court combine for 25 points. We already had the Wisconsin moment with Justin, Mike, but Dawson going to the rim in this game, this was as assertive as he's looked.
Especially down the stretch towards the end of the game. He had definitely one, maybe 2 or 3 drives to the hoop, pretty little finishes around the hoop. When I watch his game, he's clearly developing even over the, 6 games we've had so far. He still, to me, doesn't look totally comfortable. He gets a little lost out there in moments. I don't know if he's fully in college shape yet or condition yet. But then to kind of see some of that on the court and then look at the box score and see what he did in some of those big crunch time moments, he's clearly figuring it out. He's clearly putting it together. You guys have talked about that on previous pods. The fact that he can get position, seal his guy, finish at the rim in crunch time is incredibly impressive. So, So you have that play from Dawson, and we'll talk about Justin. But I think one of the things that I wanted to mention earlier, Bubbles, when we walked through DJ Creighton, and actually Steve Lavin mentioned this on the broadcast. I don't know if anybody else caught this, and I agree with it. I don't find myself saying that about Lavin that frequently, despite the similarity in our last names.
Quite.
DJ Creighton's growth into that role allows other players on the team to more comfortably inhabit their own individual roles without being pressured to do the things that DJ Creighton or a point guard needs to do. So that's not necessarily applicable with Dawson Garcia, but I think it shows up. But particularly between DJ and Kobe, I think it shows up as well. It just allows that Kobe and or other guards to play more naturally in their position. And some of that naturally transitions down to Justin Lewis. And DJ seems to be able to aggressively get him the ball when Justin is calling for it. That's an easy thing for us to see when we're watching, but I don't think that's easy to do in the moment for him.
I was going to say, I'll chime in on Justin Lewis quickly to answer your question, Mike, and I think I'll steal a word from Ben Steele, stealing from Steele. Poise, is really what it comes down to when you think about how Justin Lewis plays, how he handles himself on the court in these big moments that are far beyond his years. Nailing free throws, always seems to be contributing in every way, and always seems to be winding up coincidentally where the ball is, which is, I think it really just, that speaks to his sort of skill and his experience. He just continues to impress in every way to this moment.
No doubt. So we all know, what the importance of last night was, but let's zoom out a little bit and kind of look at this from a bigger picture standpoint. Go back to the, day one against Arkansas Pine Bluff to where we sit today as we tape this on December 15th. Mike, this team has 2 top 10 wins on its resume. The defense is significant better. You talked about the emergence of Justin Lewis. Just kind of, where are you at from a big picture standpoint now that there's 7 games into the season, have a 5-2 record, and 2 of them over top 10 teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question. I think we have a big enough sample size here at 5-2 where we can begin to look past the shittiness of the Oklahoma State loss and, some of what we saw in the loss to UCLA. I actually didn't watch much of any of that game, but I did listen to the pod, which was a really great pod. Clearly, this is a team on a trajectory. And I would go so far as to say if we played Oklahoma State in a couple of weeks as opposed to when we play them, just looking at the trajectory of this team, I think the result would be different. So like I said earlier, I think it parallels DJ Carton's development and growth into his role. I don't know where the ceiling for this team is yet. But I think what I took away from the Creighton game is that it's not smoke and mirrors. You hear Coach McDermott with Creighton talking about how physical and lengthy our team is. That's not something we've heard a lot about our team since Buzz, frankly, particularly from opposing coaches. And so
right.
Those 2 facts, give me hope as to where this team can grow into. And the fact that we talked about in the preseason, throwing everybody together, this is, they've never played together before, that this chemistry was going to take a little while to develop. They've got chemistry. They've got that secret sauce. And so I think, I don't know. I am resetting my expectations. It's a little too early in Big East play to say, should we be hoping for, to be there on the last Sunday for the Big East championship? I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility anymore, though, whereas it was earlier in the season.
I mean, Eric, to draft off Mike, I'm at a point where I'm comfortable saying this should be a tournament team. I'm still not 100% ready to guarantee and bet my life that they will be, but this team is good enough to be an NCAA tournament team. And I think, to what Mike said, possibly a safe one. Are you in the same place?
Yes. I think if we continue to see performances like this from DJ, then we are a tournament team. I think that goes without saying. If the continued ascendance of DJ, that confidence, that fearlessness, and really that sort of casting aside some of the tenuous behaviors that we saw from him on the court in those first couple of games, which are not his fault. It's not to put that on him. It's really the coming together of this team that causes some of that really across the board, up and down the roster. As that's cast aside and DJ gets more and more confident, I think this is a lock tournament team. I will say that right now. What I'll also say is this is so hard to judge going into the season. It's so hard to know before you see a team with such a fresh slate as this one and such a sort of turnover in roster and identity. But this is a team full of Marquette guys. I think you guys saw that. Suns head coach Monty Williams said last week he likes Marquette guys like Jimmy Butler, like Wes Matthews,
Crowder.
like Jay Crowder, who is now on his team. And he likes them for their toughness, their versatility, and their fearlessness. And Crowder's now bringing that to the Suns on his team. Jay said a Marquette guy is a winner first, a hard worker, someone who makes the days count, and not everyone can play at Marquette. I think we're seeing now, much to our delight, that these are guys, once again, who are Marquette guys, and I am elated.
I am still floored by the different team. I agree with you, Eric. Let me start with that. I'm floored by the different team that came out of the locker room in the second half. I don't think we've fully stated how absurd it was that through the first half of that game, not only was Creighton up by 9, but they just looked faster, more athletic at the point of attack. I thought we played hard. I thought we threw some punches back at them, but it seemed painfully evident through 20 minutes that, yeah, this is going to be a tough one, and these guys are just better. I think that was the consensus among ourselves. And to come out of the locker room and to throw haymakers back at a top 10 team, to do it in their building, and then to hold them off when they make their run down the stretch and extend a lead and then hold them off, I still can't believe what we watched. I'm not trying to make it sound like this was, NC State, knocking off, freaking Georgetown or something. But this really is like dumbfounding that they did that in that situation. After you watch the first half of that game, that we looked like the athletic defensive, like you said, the long, strong, like that's more, and that probably has to go to the head coach, Mike, right? If we're going to be negative when it's not there, we got to show love when it is.
So I never watch these things, but I watch Wojo's post-game presser, and it's basically just Ben Steele asking a line of questions because maybe one other guy got in there. But, one of the things that jumped out at me was Wojo talked a little bit about what they talked about at halftime, and I think this question came from Ben Steele. So Wojo said they talked about the things that they weren't doing well. They were allowing transition threes. They were a little bit slow on some of their rotations and, defensively and things like that. But he didn't talk about anything more than what I would consider to be the mundane. But like you said, Brian, they so clearly came out with an edge, which caught me off guard because that's not something we've seen in the Wojo era. So I'll be honest. I think you're right. Ultimately, it has to be attributed to the head coach, but it also has to be attributed to the players and the fact that they've bought into the head coach and they're fighting for him. And they feel like if they put in the effort, they're being put in the right position to win. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it was a totally different team. Even Greg McDermott said that from the first possession of the second half, he knew it was going to be a different game and that it foretold the story of the second half. So even he's picking up on these things. It'd be too strong to say it's a turning point, but maybe this is a point we look back to, in a couple of months from now and say, hey, the second half of that Creighton game was when this team started to become the team they are today. Eric, is that the way you see it too?
I think you can sum up the turning point of the game in what we saw from Dawson. In that second half, he absolutely played a different style of basketball. He played aggressive. He played mean. He played down low on the block. He was putting his shoulder in, backing down their bigs.
It was 6 offensive rebounds, 6.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And you know what? I agree, Bubbles, 100% that this is when we disparage the coaching staff for games where we have the opposite issue, we need to credit them for this in the locker room. I think some of this also, don't you see some Theo in this? Some Theo sitting down, again, pure speculation, but with Dawson saying, let's go, this is how we need to play. Kobe, Greg, and Jamal. I think you're seeing also the benefit of strong senior and junior leadership on this team.
Yes.
That really can reinforce those messages from Wojo, which again, why are we all of a sudden defensively such a much different team and better team than we have been in the past? I think as much as we credit Wojo in this, we also do need to credit the tone-setting senior and junior class members on the squad. It's very important. And again, I think you see a lot of that come through in the play that was so pivotal at the end of this game from some of the underclassmen.
Theo John in his fourth year of college basketball, third year as a starter. Greg Elliott, his fourth year of college basketball. This is his first really consistent run as getting regular burn that he's earned over the last few games, but still obviously a big deal. Jamal Cain, as we know, four-year senior, now a regular starter. Wasn't as monstrous last night, but I'm going to go back to it. I gave him love yesterday, and I'm doing it again. That tie-up to force the jump ball when we were up by 3 on the missed free throw by DJ, I'm not trying to – Creighton has the ball with one of the best three-point shooting teams and a chance to tie it. We didn't give him a chance to tie it because Jamal tied that ball up. Like, dude, get in there. That was huge.
Who do you see making that play? Like, that's a Jay Crowder play. That's a Jimmy Butler play. That's a Jarrell McNeil play. Like, that is a classic Marquette play from the profile of player that we want and need and thrive with. I fully agree, Bubbles. That was an unbelievable contribution by Jamal.
I'm glad you pointed out the upperclassmen because they deserve a lot of credit for what happened because that doesn't, for as good as Dawson and Justin were, that doesn't happen without, those guys being there. I think we've hit, obviously, a lot of the big picture stuff. Let's start looking ahead, and I think people are most interested. This will be, coming out before Marquette's next game on Thursday against Seton Hall. Eric, I'll go back to you. What are you most looking forward to now? Now knowing what you know, where are your eyes going to on the Big East schedule that was recently just fully released and now out?
Yeah, first of all, we may get to this later, but let's knock on wood. I hope we get to all of these games with the way of the world right now and how things are. But
yeah,
we have 3 games, obviously, up until Christmas. We have the opportunity, as it stands now, again, knock on wood. There's a lot of wood or touch wood if for friends across the pond, but we do have the opportunity to go 3-0 against top 10 teams before Christmas, which would be unbelievable. I'm not expecting that. I'm not looking to that. We all know Nova and who they are. I have circled on my whiteboard right here in my office, UConn at home on January 5th, and again at the end of the Big East slate, the third to last matchup on February 27th, presumably at Gamble and Stores, I would think. But I really, seeing what we see and knowing what we know now about DJ and his talent, I cannot wait to watch him go against James Bouknight. It's going to be such an unbelievable matchup. Generally, obviously, welcoming UConn back in with a loss would be such a beautiful way to sort of send them back to Connecticut. Bouknight playing out of his mind, as we've all seen up to date right now while we're recording on December 15th. He was the 53rd player, best player in the 2019 class as ranked by 24/7 Sports. DJ, for those at home, will remember that. I think he was ranked in the 30s coming into this in the same recruiting class. Similar measurables. Bouknight on the preseason watch list for the Jerry West Award, which is the honor given to the best shooting guard. I cannot wait to watch DJ and Bouknight go toe-to-toe.
I know a lot of the names and faces have changed, Mike, but I'll be honest, I'm still looking forward to playing Seton Hall on Thursday. I know none of those guys are there. Most are gone, and Mamu will still be there, and that'll be a funny matchup with him and Theo again, but I just don't like them. I'd like to beat them. They were part of the skid at the end of last season. I think that – it's weird. I don't think this team's good enough to where they're – you start looking at all the future dates on the schedule, even though we as fans can do that. I think Thursday will be fun. I don't think Thursday's a lock by any means. That'll be a challenging game. They got to come back and beat a solid Seton Hall team that has had our number of late.
They have had our number. I agree. So many different faces, not, except for Mamu and maybe a couple other folks. Miles Kale, I believe, is a senior who's been around for a while. Always look forward to Seton Hall.
We've lost 4 straight games to Seton Hall. We haven't beaten them since January 12th of 2019. That includes a Big East tournament loss and then being swept last year. So the redemption tour began. We got swept by Creighton a year ago. You take one. Now you got to get one against Seton Hall.
I think that's a fair point. There's still someone who's obviously the best coach in the Big East, and there's still the class of the Big East, and that's the Villanova Wildcats. And they're not what they have been in recent years necessarily, although I think still loaded with talent. I'm admittedly not incredibly familiar with them this year. we're talking about what's the ceiling for this team. How can we rejigger expectations for this team? Sweep Villanova. Show us you're for real. Take on Villanova. We play them at home. I think it's December 23rd, excuse me. So a couple days before Christmas. I want to see us make a statement in those games. I think this team has that edge and has that want to. Those are the games that I'm circled. Totally agree with UConn. That'll be fun to see them on the schedule again and face up against them and welcome them. Welcome them back to the Fiserv Forum from that original trip they took there. What was that, Bubbles? Like 15 years ago.
Yep.
Steve Novak and in our entry into the Big East. So a lot of fun games. But for me personally, this still runs through Villanova, and I want to see how we approach those games.
100%. Look, without looking at the slate of games on December 23rd, Marquette Villanova is going to be in the top 3 of best games in college basketball that night, at least from a hype standpoint. You'll have the attention of the big national shows and the college basketball writers and the podcasters, and it'll be talked about. And you're right, Mike. That's an opportunity. What are you going to do against them? And look, there's no shame in getting beat by that team. Get down to brass tacks. Yeah, Nova and Creighton are probably talent-wise, I think, better than Marquette. We obviously turned that on its head for a half. I'd like to see it a few more times, obviously, from a continuity standpoint. But I can't get the words out of my mouth enough. Like, I'm excited. I haven't been excited about Marquette basketball, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic with it or just be some kind of negative Nancy. I'm not, and we're not going to just constantly rip on Marcus every single time. But we weren't really a fun team to watch. You can say all you want about watching somebody score 45 points. Like, it was cool, but you knew you weren't. The ceiling was incredibly low.
We have flashes of real NBA talent coming through. And that's not to say Marcus didn't have that. He, of course, is now on the Denver Nuggets roster. It would be silly to say that, but just a high level of talent across every spot on the roster, seemingly at this point. And most of all, these guys seem to love each other and love playing for Marquette. It's been a truly joyous brand of basketball that hasn't been soured by late season collapses or tournament failure or elite players very publicly abandoning the program and transferring. This, I couldn't agree more, Bubbles, for the first time in it seems years. And this is not to knock the best scorer in Marquette University's history, Marcus Howard. This is a team that is truly infectious and incredibly fun and easy to root for. And I couldn't be, I'm with you guys. I looked past Villanova. They are going to be so much fun. It's going to be one of the best games of the early season. And then hopefully again, come later in the season.
When there was 4 games to go in 2019, we were in first place with, I believe, a 2-game lead in the Big East Conference. And Mike, I remember we did a podcast after that, and we were kind of dancing into the end zone. It looked like we kind of sewn up the Big East, and we were going to do it. We were all kind of like, oh my God, like we're going to win the Big East Conference. We could be a 3 seed, and then we proceeded to lose 6 of our last 7 games. And yes, John Morant ended Joey Hauser's life, and we all know how that went down. That was the last time I'd say where I felt uber optimistic. But this feels obviously much more whole.
You're seeing this in college football right now. With regard to the pandemic and COVID, you're seeing this already in the Big East. Some teams haven't even started their Big East schedule due to postponements. I think the management of a program this year is going to be more important than ever. You see Ohio State football, what are they, 5 or 6 games? Still somehow they're getting into the playoff. I normally I wouldn't bring that up, but I do think that's going to be a factor this year. Can the athletic department, testing, isolation, all those sorts of things that go into getting these kids, keeping them healthy and keeping them on the court. I actually think that's going to be a factor in whether we could actually take the Big East this year. And so I know it's not basketball, but it's something on my mind.
To add to that, Mike, and I hesitated talking about UConn, and it is going to be a big affair when we play them. They do have incredible talent. The sample size we've seen from them is so small at this point because of exactly what you just stated. I think they played 2 or 3 games thus far. They're going to take a 2 or 3 week break between their last game, which was a win at USC, and when they play Creighton this coming Sunday. this season hinges on the ability of an entire family of individuals in that program to come in and coalesce around the idea of safety protocols, measures, testing, and responsibility. And we are lucky that, and again, knock on wood, but we're lucky that that is a foundational element of the Marquette basketball program that Wojo has taught and preached since day one. And it's something too that it's in the introduction of this podcast. You know, it is part of that speech that he gave coming into the job. So again, it's going to be so interesting to see how this all plays out and where we land as a conference come March. But
we are always experimenting with new segments and bits on this show. That does not stop on this day. Eric Pond, in our pre-show meeting, it wasn't a meeting, it was a single email. But nevertheless, in that pre-show email, laid out what I think might be the single greatest named concept in all of television, radio, and professional podcasting. Eric, take us to Krampus Corner.
Does this bring to me like a producer credit on the pod and just go around Bubbles? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, who's in the biz. You're a biz man. You're in the biz.
I'm not a biz man. No.
Okay.
No. I'm a nobody. Nobody cares about me. Give the people the background and let us know what you want to hit, and Mike and I can pontificate off of you.
Sure. So we're going on some Christmas themes here in this episode. We've got a few games left. I am on Christmas break, as Bubbles alluded to at the top of the pod. So figured we'd, introduce the Krampus Corner, which, as I think hopefully most people know, I think it's generally in the zeitgeist, but is the sort of horror story side of Christmas in the anti-Santa Claus. Just looking at potentially the downfall or the dark side of this season, let's pivot for a second. And I think it's fair to ask, after 2 years of epic letdowns, does Krampus lurk around the corner for this team? And should we brace ourselves for another late season letdown? We've skidded really hard on the schedule and in our underpants at the end of seasons the last 2 years. Should we brace ourselves for that?
I was just thinking there's way too much positivity on this podcast. We need to fucking get back to our bread and butter.
Krampus, baby.
Gloom and doom, baby. Yeah. Is the season going to fall apart again? Hell, maybe. I don't know. I mean, we'll find out when it happens, right? It's happened the last 2 years. This is a very different group, I guess would be my answer to that, Eric, is I think with the personalities that are here, it's a very different constructed team and a lot of guys who obviously haven't been around for that. So why should it? But we'll find out. Honestly, that's something the coaching staff has to take care of.
I mean, I would say, that we're not going to talk about potential injuries. That's a fact of the game. But, this, to your point, Brian, the team is structured differently so as to have more individual supporting its success. And so I don't think this is a situation where you remove one piece and everything crumbles. I think there's more support all around the team. So I think it's certainly possible. I think DJ Creighton is one of those people, though, not just for what he individually brings to the table, but how he sets everybody else up. This has been a shitty year, except for a couple bright spots. I'm not ready to head down that dark road yet. I was really loving our happy place, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I can't foresee that right now unless all progress and development stops amongst particularly some of the new faces.
So I will take a moment to rubber stamp what you both said. This does seem like a clean slate, a different team, a completely new identity of individuals who are coalescing in front of our eyes around really excellent Marquette style play of basketball. But I think it needs to be drilled into, what is currently or has the potential to hold this team back as we get into the long Big East season, and then where we've really fallen apart, that last stretch run of 6 games or 7 games in the Big East slate going into then Madison Square Garden and then entering the tournament. Do you see an Achilles heel right now other than inexperience?
I think it's as apparent, and even after the Creighton game the other night, Mike. Marquette goes 12 for 21 from behind the 3-point line. It is the big, among the defensive effort, it's the biggest reason on offense why they won that game. They haven't shot it great this season. Under 30% from three as a whole, 29.8. That's going to need to get in the 32, 33, 34 range to, Eric, if we're talking about beating Villanova, being in the top 3 in the conference, they're going to have to shoot it better. And that's DJ Creighton, which was very encouraging last night. He shot it well. Obviously, Greg Elliott catching fire is awesome. I don't think that we can bank on that every game. Jamal, DJ, Kobe, they're going to take the majority of them. Dawson, too, they have to shoot it better. If there's an Achilles heel, that's the one I'm worried about.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'll agree with that, and to back that up even more, look at the first half and second half against Creighton. First half, we shot 40% from three. Second half, 77%. We reduced the number of shots we took from three in the second half, increased our efficiency. So, and that holds true for field goals overall and then free throws. I totally agree with that. I think that's a bright point. I guess the only other thing that I would think in there is who's going to continue to step up in these big moments. I think we saw a lot from the team in the second half that a lot of people were willing to step up in the big moments, and it happened to work out. Is that going to be consistently true? Because we're going to have a lot of nut punch times coming down the stretch here through the rest of the season. Are we going to have consistently DJ Creighton, Kobe, whomever stepping up? And foul trouble. Foul trouble was a very real problem last night. It didn't actually bite us. If that game goes to overtime, if that's officiated a little bit differently, some of that is just going to happen. But also, come on, Theo. Come on. We don't need 6 guys with 4 fouls.
Mike, I think you just co-opted my answer to that question. If I were to answer my own question, it's foul trouble. It's turnovers and it's foul trouble, but primarily it's foul trouble. Last night, we got away with it. Against UCLA, we did not get away with it. We lost to a high major. That's one of our losses. Grant, say what you need to say about the job the refs did in that game. Yes, they were probably paid off by UCLA. Just hypothetically, Bill Walton.
Come on.
Bill Walton paying him with illicit or illegal substances on the side to get through that match. But foul trouble it's been a problem. It's been problematic for this team since the get. And I'd like it, and for Theo for years, it is also part and parcel with his style of play and how he conducts himself on the court a little bit. I think also then that profile generates more calls from the refs. People look for it because they know that's who Theo is. And it's unfortunate.
And look, if you're only going to play 7 guys like they did last night or on Monday, which was the right decision out of everything, Dexter Cano didn't belong in that game. He just didn't.
We talked about Kobe early in the game, early in the pod. Kobe has had consistent contributions this year, which has been extremely promising, and he's really been a core part of this team and of the lineup. He fouled out of the UCLA game. He is very much in that same camp with Theo of he is susceptible to getting in foul trouble. That's scary going down the stretch.
You mentioned Dexter Akano. I'm a little surprised that I'm going to watch close. Given his build, given his athleticism, I would be surprised if increasingly he doesn't get little spurts of minutes here and there. I think when he came in, what was that, a few games ago, he had a really rough stretch for like 2 minutes, and it was just bad. He's a guy who I think could spell Kobe on defense in stretches, just given his body type and his makeup, from what I've seen in limited fashion. And then, of course, the Instagram videos and all that stuff. So, if we're talking about potential, you have Samir hopefully coming back in a few weeks, but also guys like Dexter Akano or Jose, are they going to grow throughout the season to give us even more flexibility? Who knows?
Yeah, completely agree. Fellas, thanks for entertaining the Krampus Corner, or as we originally intended to call the Krampus Foods Corner, in honor of Campus Foods. I think we all know a Marquette
R.I.P.
and legend where Flats of Keystone Light flowed heavily off the shelves to perhaps underage consumers. It seems that Campus Foods is no longer actually on campus. If people remember, right next to what was it, Subway and Campus Books? Is that where it was?
Oh yeah, yep.
It is now gone. Apparently, it is a Sendix or something like that.
The new company they completely redeveloped that corner. Those janky Subway and the janky Campus Foods was for the post. When I'm sure that happened probably within 5 years of. We all graduated in 09 and 10 between the three of us, and that was probably gone within about 3 years after. To think we used to buy real groceries from there, that was probably not great.
You know, it's really too bad they blow up local small business institutions like that and don't blow up the shitholes that we lived in for 2 years, which should be wiped out.
That's actually a really good.
Those are all still standing somehow.
That is a hill I will climb with you and die on, because that is bullshit. Like, that is complete bullshit.
Yeah, some of the off-campus housing definitely needs to get blown the hell up.
Not that some of the proprietors of those small businesses weren't also predatory in certain ways.
For sure. I was calculating the rent that we pay. For some reason, I was thinking about the rent we paid junior and senior year, and like, there's no fucking way. That is no. Especially when you combine it with
Tell the people what we paid. Maybe it seems ridiculous now. Wasn't it $340 a month per person?
Oh my God, that is cheap as shit.
Well, no, I think it was more than that, but it was per person.
I thought we were under $350. I thought per person.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't have it in front of me. And granted, our place was brand new. It went up. I think the year after you lived there, we paid like $575, $600 a person for a 3-man. Wow. Granted, we had 2 full bathrooms, but still,
we were definitely under 400. I know, but Eric, our place was a dump.
Oh, I know.
It was a great dump. It was a great dump, but it was a dump.
It was no Renee Rowe, right? Imagine Renee Rowe right now and how fucking grimy that place must be.
Oh God. Like, it was losing its steam even then.
It was like at the end of its rope in terms of
10 more years on that place cannot have been. This parlays us into the single greatest segment. The junk drawer continues to take the nation by storm. More and more people reacting after every single show. Eric Pond, you are the proprietor of the junk drawer. There's a big one. There's a big thing to start with today. News out of Milwaukee. Give the people what they want.
Well, I promised to run the junk drawer with no less skis than the Milwaukee area landlords who gouged us for years on campus. And also shout out to Neighbor, who I heard talking about 30-minute junk drawers that I propagate on the pod during your last session last night. So shout out to Neighbor. We're going to go extra long tonight.
Oh, Jesus.
The first junk drawer item, yes, and this is not so much junk. It is actually important and semi-pertinent. I think we all saw this afternoon the alerts coming across our mobile devices, but Giannis signed the max unexpectedly and remains in Milwaukee and at Fiserv Forum for at least the next, I think it's 6 years. Is it 5 on top of that year he has remaining on his contract?
It's 4 with a player
on top, so it's 5. Okay,
4 player option for the 5th.
Yeah. Great. Okay, great. So this is again worth mentioning on this podcast for obvious reasons, but Milwaukee is a basketball destination. That ownership group is awesome for so many reasons. The Lazarys have brought to us Fiserv. They have shown the willingness to invest in not only the Bucks in that franchise, but Milwaukee generally, and also with that Marquette University and our basketball program. We, of course, pay, I'm sure, a great deal of money to rent the space that we do in that facility. But it is just great. Milwaukee is going to be a hub of basketball excellence for at least the next 5 years. It is going to be one of the centers of the basketball universe for the foreseeable future with Giannis. And there are very few things that could derail that at this point with Giannis locked up through his prime, through, I think, the year 31 season. It's just great for Creighton, as we say, boys. Who doesn't want to come in as a 17, 18-year-old, a Jordan Brand school in a place that Giannis wanted to call home when he could have called LA home. He could have called Miami home. And those were real legitimate options for him. it's just perfect.
If it improves Creighton, you know I'm in. Hey, props to the Greek Freak, props to the Bucks, props to the dual Marquette Bucks fans. We know you're out there, tons of you. It's a great day to be. It's a great day to be you.
The next one, Brian, I'll let you. It's
you got to be kidding me with this.
I'm interested in this one.
It's in our notes here, but this was just kind of a stream of consciousness, Eric's on vacation kind of thing this afternoon. But Brian, I thought a lot. I rewatched the podcast that you did last night, the live stream on YouTube. I was so interested, and I was thrilled to see that you were displaying the other great game of the night on that very large TV behind you, which was the Browns lost to the Ravens, but
yes.
So many interesting things and storylines that we could do a whole.
We got done taping with about 2 minutes left in regulation time, so turn around and see what the hell was going on.
Oh my God, unbelievable! Anyway, just a drunk drawer idea. That's a large TV. Is that potential ad space and a potential revenue driver for the Real Chili podcast, where we can put up either like a scrolling sort of banner of supporters of the pod, or if someone really wants to step up, we could do a full screen ad. We'll kind of rotate it like behind home plate, in a digital style. We can really kind of cue these things up, space them out. So what I want to say on the junk drawer right now is hit us up, baby. You got ideas. You are a local.
We can patch whatever you want into that monitor. We'll make that happen.
We could figure out like live tweets or live.
I did have a couple. We had a couple people in the comments last night point out like, how does this dude always have a football game on behind him when we're doing it? And I don't think that's the case. So now I'm gonna just start mixing up. I'm gonna put PBS, all kinds of random shit when we're doing it. And, or maybe I just gotta start changing locations in the house. But it's a good spot. It's the kitchen counter. Backs up to the family room.
It's a great spot. There are no complaints. It adds a little visual interest.
That's fair.
I want to see little Ken Burns Civil War on there, Brian.
Sure.
Let's really chop it up a little bit. But I got to say, I agree with that commenter. I've noticed there's live sports on that TV every time I see you, which,
I'd be lying if I didn't say, like Eric, I, from time to time, although much more responsibly now, might partake in a wager here and there. So I try to keep an eye on all the different, irons in the fire, as they say.
Are you saying you responsibly place wagers?
I'm much more responsible now than I was about 8 months ago.
I thought you were saying more responsible than me.
You definitely are more irresponsible than I am right now.
That's not a high bar to clear at this point.
Yeah,
so, fair enough.
8 months ago, I'd say I was right there with you. Now I've reined myself in a little bit, but
burned pretty hard.
After a 12-year run of just very poor decisions. At some point, we'll talk about Potawatomi Casino on this.
No, I do not do that stuff.
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it because they have a small fortune of mine that I'm not happy about. Pete Mohan, Eric.
What is this one
featured on your rundown?
Apparently, Mikey Labs has not listened to last night's pod yet, or through the junk drawer.
Hit it, yeah.
But Mohan recounted shaking hands with President Lovell at, I think, the tournament game he attended. Was it at the Dunk or the XL or in Hartford, I think?
Somewhere on the East Coast. It's all the same shit.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, Mohan's shaking hands and kissing babies with President Lovell? Is he a secret mega donor? And if so, does he have the ear of the president?
I just want our listeners to know in our notes, this is teed up so perfectly. Mohan shaking hands with Lovell, ... Is he a secret mega donor? It just reads like a fucking BuzzFeed, whatever headline. It's so perfect.
It's
I've written listicles before.
It would explain Pete's, confident declarative statements on all things the university should do. Like he's actually spewing those into people of power that can actually do things. It's certainly possible. Maybe he's just keeping it, blue collar and working a normal gig like the rest of us while he's got, Daddy Warbucks money sitting in the bank that he throws at Marquette and whatever else he wants to. It's certainly possible.
Also tying this into the last point here, he is now Mostradamus. He is the prognosticator number one for Marquette basketball betting over the last, this season. Who knows? Maybe
he moved his streak to 5-0 on over/under bets in the last 5 Marquette games.
Certainly does.
I'll be honest. I keep telling for the last 3 I've considered doing it and going, he doesn't fucking know anything. No, I'm not listening to him. I'm not going to do it. Eric, we both could have been retired by now if we had just.
I know.
One that we jump on is when when the streak's ending. But now I just want to see how long he can keep it going. Pete's 5-0 so far in his over/under bets with Marquette basketball. We'll see if he can take it to 6-0 on Thursday.
I will say, Mike or Bubbles, that I do know Mohan was on Marquette moneyline last night, and I followed him there, and I did not parlay that with any over/under, and it paid off handsomely for the big dog over here on vacation. So
it did.
I was very happy. So one day we will
like making a little extra cash on vacation.
One day we will reinvest those funds back into the university. We will gain the influence over basketball decisions, and the Real Chili shall come.
That would be so bad for the basketball program.
Shall come full circle. Oh, it'd be terrible for everybody. Everyone should really.
The irrational decision. We would have fired the coaches 3 times over by now. There's no shot.
People should really hope we don't do this. That brings us to the final junk drawer item listed out here for me, and that is I don't know if anyone saw this today. I got an alert because I followed DJ Creighton on Instagram, but he went live with the entire team on Instagram from Starbucks today in what I can only assume was leaving Omaha or returning to Milwaukee from Omaha. I admittedly did not stay on to learn that. It's clearly a squad of coffee lovers ready to embrace the Big Face Coffee brand on Marquette's campus. You have a dozen ambassadors who could not be of higher prominence on campus at this particular moment. So just want to throw this out that the MU administration and the Brew Bayou, the Brew Coffee Properties really do need to figure out this alliance. It's very important. And perhaps Mohan, with his connections to President Lovell, can help us drive this home.
I did not see that today, Eric. That is some big league junk drawer content for the people there. What a podcast. We just ripped off nearly an hour reacting to this game and talking future, Krampus stuff, junk drawer stuff. What a night.
It's left me speechless. We may have a second career here in show podcasting. Here.
We will not be quitting our day jobs. Thank you to everybody watching, listening. It's been a lot of fun. Obviously, the world is more fun when Marquette wins. And really, since we've launched this podcast, outside of a little run in 2019 and maybe that Villanova game in 2016, we really haven't had a whole ton of feel great all the time. And this has been pretty fun so far. So, excluding Oklahoma State. Thursday, we're back. Seton Hall, another late tip. We got a 9 o'clock game on the East Coast, 8 o'clock Central. I don't know which ones of us will be here, but we'll be here. So join us. Mike Lavender, final thoughts.
It's good to be back for this episode. I don't know if I'll be back for many more, but I agree. There's been some great changes to the pod and to the platform this year, and they wouldn't have happened without everyone, but in particular, they wouldn't have happened without Pete Mohan, and particularly allowing all you viewers and or listeners to gaze upon our gorgeous faces. That Pete Mohan did that because he didn't want to withhold that from you any longer. So he deserves a good deal of credit. But, specifically to our listeners, thank you for engaging in the comments and send us feedback. If you see something, if there's something, if you want us to just do a junk drawer episode once a week, hell, maybe we do that. Send us feedback. Always love to hear it. We're on Twitter at Real Chili Pod.
Eric Pond, put a bow on it for us.
I'm just happy to be invited back every time there's a podcast. You guys are willing to have me back on to bring this nonsense and foolishness. I hear it tonight. I couldn't agree more with what Mike said. Thanks to Real Chili Nation for embracing the change and kind of this new post-game hangout and analysis that we're bringing to the table. It's been so great to see. But yes, again, thank you to the bros for continuing to put up with
and inevitably
and junk drawer and all the crap we're bringing to the table here.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Real Chili Podcast. I'm Brian Henry, Eric Pond, and Mike Lavender with the cohorts, Pete Mohan, Pete Worth. Not part of this one. You'll hear them later in the week. We'll talk to you after the game against Seton Hall. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.